The lights inside Studio 6B at Rockefeller Center glowed brighter than usual that night. The audience was electric, clapping to the house band as the familiar theme music of The Tonight Show starring Jimmy. Fallon filled the room. Behind the curtain, Mila Kunis adjusted her blazer and exhaled slowly. She'd done hundreds of interviews in her career, sitcoms, red carpets, press junkets. Nothing about this should have felt intimidating. On the other side of the stage, host Jimmy Fallon was finishing his monologue, energized as always, bouncing slightly on his heels as laughter rolled through the audience. "And we've got an amazing guest tonight," Jimmy announced. "You know her from blockbuster films and iconic TV roles. Give it up for Mila Kunis." The applause was thunderous. Mila walked out smiling, waving, embracing Jimmy in a quick hug before sitting down. The chemistry at first was effortless. They joked about parenting disasters. They teased each other about aging in Hollywood. The crowd laughed easily. Then Jimmy made a pivot. "So," he said with a playful grin, "there's been a lot of buzz online about that comment you made last week. You know, the one about Hollywood hypocrisy." Mila's smile didn't disappear, but it shifted. "Oh," she replied lightly. "Which part of the internet are we quoting tonight?" The audience chuckled. Jimmy leaned back. "Some people think you were calling out major studios. Others think you were hinting at certain late-night shows." He raised his eyebrows dramatically for effect. The audience laughed again. But Mila didn't. "I wasn't hinting," she said calmly. "I was being direct." The laughter faded quicker this time. Jimmy kept the playful tone. "Direct about what exactly?" Mila crossed her legs and folded her hands in her lap. "About how women in this industry are often asked different questions than men. About how narratives get shaped depending on what sells." The room shifted. Subtle, but noticeable. Jimmy nodded slowly. Sure. But don't you think that's changing?" "It's changing because people keep talking about it," Mila replied. "Not because it magically fixed itself." A murmur ran through the audience. Not negative, not positive. Just uncertain. Jimmy laughed lightly, perhaps trying to reset the tone. "Hey, we ask everyone weird questions here." "That's kind of my brand." Mila tilted her head. "There's a difference between weird and pointed." The band stopped softly playing background riffs. Somewhere off stage, a producer adjusted their headset. This wasn't in the pre-interview notes, and the energy had just shifted. Jimmy leaned forward, still smiling, but more carefully now. "Okay," he said. "Let's get specific. Are you saying shows like this contribute to the problem?" The audience collectively held its breath. Mila didn't hesitate. "I'm saying media shapes perception, and perception shapes careers." A few claps echoed uncertainly before fading. Jimmy nodded. "But we've always celebrated you here." "I appreciate that," Mila said. "But celebration doesn't cancel patterns." The air felt heavier. Jimmy glanced briefly toward the cameras, then back at her. "Are we talking about something that happened here?" There it was. The direct question. Mila paused for just a second. "I've done interviews," she said slowly, "where I was asked about my diet before being asked about my work. Where I was asked how I balance motherhood before anyone asked about my directing." Jimmy shifted in his seat. "Not here, though, right?" He pressed lightly. Mila gave a half smile. "You tell me." A ripple of tension swept through the crowd. Jimmy laughed, but it didn't land. "Come on," he said. "We keep it fun." "Fun for who?" Mila replied. The words were calm. Not angry, but precise. The band was silent now. Jimmy's posture straightened. "If there's something specific, I'd rather you say it." Mila nodded. "Okay, last time I was here, we spent 6 minutes on a story about my husband pranking me." A few audience members laughed nervously. "And how long did we talk about the nonprofit I was launching?" she asked. Jimmy didn't answer immediately. Producers off stage began gesturing subtly. "Wrap it up. Change topic. Go to a game segment." Jimmy cleared his throat. "We're a comedy show." "And I respect that," Mila replied. "But comedy shouldn't erase substance." Silence. For the first time that night, Jimmy wasn't smiling. "You know," he said carefully, "this feels less like an interview and more like a critique." Mila met his gaze steadily. "Maybe it's both." A producer's voice echoed faintly from the wings, barely audible but sharp enough to catch attention. Jimmy looked off stage for half a second. That half-second said everything. "All right," he said, finally turning back. "We're going to take a quick break." The audience clapped on cue, but the energy was fractured. As the cameras cut to commercial, Jimmy leaned toward Mila and whispered something unheard. Her expression didn't change. Seconds later, a stage manager approached. The whispers grew louder behind the curtain. And then, unexpectedly, the decision was made. When the show returned from commercial, Mila was no longer on the couch. Jimmy addressed the audience alone. "Due to time constraints," he said with a tight smile, "we're adjusting tonight's lineup." The words were polished, but everyone in that room knew something had happened. Backstage, the air buzzed with tension. Mila stood near the dressing room corridor, her publicist beside her. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't crying. She was composed. Jimmy entered moments later, jacket slightly unbuttoned, smile gone. "That didn't have to go that way," he said quietly. "It didn't," Mila agreed. "But it did." Producers hovered nearby, speaking in hushed tones. "You blindsided us," one of them said. "I answered your questions," Mila replied. Jimmy rubbed his forehead. "There's a time and place." Mila's voice remained steady. "When is that time? When it's pre-approved?" The hallway fell silent. This wasn't explosive anger. It was sharper than that. It was controlled confrontation. A staff member informed them that the network wanted to move forward and avoid further escalation. Social media was already reacting. Clips from the first segment were circulating rapidly. Mila Kunis calls out late-night double standards. Awkward moment on The Tonight Show. Was she kicked off? Inside the studio, the show continued. A musical guest performed. The audience clapped. The band played, but the earlier moment lingered like unfinished business. Before leaving, Mila turned to Jimmy one last time. "I like you," she said honestly. "But liking someone doesn't mean staying quiet." Jimmy looked at her, conflicted. "This is supposed to be fun," he said. "It can still be meaningful," she replied. Then she walked down the hallway, heels echoing against the polished floor. The next morning, headlines exploded. Some claimed she was removed. Others said she stormed off. A few argued it was a staged controversy. But those who were there knew the truth was more layered. No shouting. No thrown chairs. Just a clash between entertainment and accountability. Between comfort and confrontation. Between what late-night television has always been and what some believe it should become. Was Mila Kunis truly kicked off The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon? Or was she simply unwilling to let the moment pass politely? In live television, perception is everything. And sometimes, the most dramatic exits aren't loud. They're deliberate. The stage lights dimmed that night as they always do. But something had shifted. Not just on the couch, but in the conversation beyond it.